Okay. Gotta close things so that I can pay attention to what I'm doing instead of just staring at myself like a little bird with a mirror in my cage. Hi. Welcome to my channel. I'm Rachel, and this is my book club. It is Vampires Are My Special Interest Book Club is the title. I picked it. I'm sticking with it. You get what you get here. Hello, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. We are finishing for real, talking about this book, the Mammoth Book of Vampire Stories by Women, edited by Stephen Jones. We started it months ago, and we're finishing it by ultimately ranking all of the stories. I intended to do all of the ranking in one video last week, but man, I'm disabled and I got real tired and I just had to quit. There's only maybe 10 stories left to cover out of 35. So I don't think this is going to last the full 2 hours that I try to stream, but I do have the next book with me, so at least we can start that when we're done with the ranking. But yeah, for now, let's finish this part. And I felt bad when I logged off last time because I felt like I was being particularly fair to the older stories in the collection. I didn't prepare properly and I was relying on memories and vibes. And I went through this week to pick them out. Which ones were they? They were Llewellyn Miller. I have to move this. The Haunted House, and Good Lady Duquesne. And I wanted to talk about them in depth for real and give them a fair shot and not just wipe them away as B-level because they're old and therefore probably not that good anyway, you know. So let's start with that. For Llewellyn Miller, I thought this was interesting. I didn't realize this before in her author's blurb. It says her husband, Dr. Charles Freeman, was an alcoholic who was committed to the state hospital for the insane in 1920, where he died 3 years later. And I struggle with this story a lot with wanting to put where to rank it, because I feel as I read it. Well, let me see what I said. Reading this leads me down an interesting personal navel-gazing path thing. It's both I'm disabled and plump and youthful and wish I had a live-in caretaker to help me function. Am I the monster in the story? And maybe the author was disabled or experiencing disability in a way that led to writing the story. There's thoughts of am I the monster? Who is the vampire here? Who deserves care? I guess I could have helped you by summarizing a little bit of what I mean, which is that the vampire here is Llewellyn Miller, this beautiful, youthful girl who the story very clearly sees her as just a lump who does nothing, and she feeds off of people who do the things for her, like cleaning and cooking and caring for her in general. So reading this, it feels like somebody is looking at somebody who is disabled who needs a caretaker and saying, wow, that person looks so healthy, but maybe they're just draining the people around them. And I just feel like I don't like that. I don't like that perspective of people with disabilities, and that makes me not like the story very much. But it is an interesting kind of, you turn it on its head a little and you look at it in another light as, well, maybe the person who wrote it, the author, with her experience with her alcoholic husband, maybe she has a different view of disability and she was trying to write it out and discover what was in her head. I don't know. I don't know this person. They died a long time ago. But yeah, let's see, what did I have, for anybody who wasn't here last week, I tried to like highlight at least the things that I like as I was reading. So even if I don't particularly like the story, I can point to things that I did like within it. In their hearts, although they scarcely would have owned it, was a survival of the wild horror and frenzied fear of their ancestors who had dwelled in the same age with Luella Miller. I just like that sentence. Straight as an arrow, with the spring of one recently let loose from the bow of life, is a fun little play with words. Straight as an arrow, with the spring of one recently let loose from the bow of life. And I see her. You could never cheat me about Luella Miller. The main character talking about her. I could always see straight through her. You could never cheat me. Why don't she stay home and do her washing instead of coming over here and doing your work, when you are just as well able and enough sight more so than she is to do it, says I. Then Luella, she looked at me like a baby who has a rattle shook at it. She sort of laughed, as innocent as you please. Oh, I can't do the work myself, Miss Anderson, says she. I never did. Maria has to do it. Just the idea of her. She looked like a baby who has a rattle shook at it. What? What do you mean? But sometimes I have wondered lately if she knew it. If she wasn't like a baby with scissors in its hand, cutting everybody without knowing what it was doing. And I'm sure I feel like I'm the right audience in a way for this, because it's written mostly like an old woman telling a story about what happened once, you know, so it's like really like dialogue heavy, and I like that. I like the creativity in it, in how you tell a story through somebody else, but also there's like another narrator. I don't know what to call that point of view. I've forgotten what all the point of views are. It's not quite third, but kind of is. Oh god, I don't know. But I liked it. So I feel bad putting Luella Miller in B, because I don't think it's quite B. I think it's a good story if you ignore the questionable disability aspects. So, I do want to move it up, actually. How do I do that? Because this is paint. We're not fancy here. Yeah. I think it's an effective horror story. And I like the drama at the end, because I believe there's a house fire. And, like, the main character who's telling the story about Luella Miller, like, runs over to where her house used to be and dies where her house used to be, or something, of old age. It's just got the drama, which is a lot of fun. No, for the haunted house, which I also put in B. What do I have? Do I have anything highlighted? But you don't believe in ghosts, Mr. Desmond. Your Anglo-Saxon common sense forbids it. It's just really funny. He's like, but you, this man that I'm speaking to, who I've never spoken before, to your Anglo-Saxon common sense forbids you from believing in ghosts. And it's like, sir, we haven't spoken before this. Don't be weird about my blood, dude. Come on. And Desmond says that his spring and his clutch and his voice were like the spring and the clutch and the growl of a strong, savage beast. I kind of like that, kind of don't. The repetition, I think it almost works, which I thought was a little funny. Desmond hates to know that there in the dark he screams like a caught hare. Then he remembered that he was a man and shouted, "Help! Here, help!" You're quite safe, he's tied up and locked in the laboratory. I was really tired when I was reading this one. Why did I like that? Oh, it just like because the story, like, he passes out. The main character passes out, the point of view guy. So he doesn't know what happens. He just saw something dramatic. There's a lot of, like, yelling and screaming. He passed out. He woke up. And then there's a guy standing there going, no, you're fine. You're fine. Don't worry. I tied him up, and I locked him in the laboratory. You're fine. It was just, like, trying to, like, imagine, like, the Scooby-Doo running around of how that happened. And, what was my notes? I wonder how crazy prior is within the time this was published. Were people spreading conspiracy theories about blood like this guy, or is this one new? I mean that he, like, it was like, he's a vampire, right? So he is taking the blood of this guy, but he wants the blood of the guy because he has all 4 races in his biology, and therefore that would make him a superior human or something. So if he took his blood, it's all Pulp Fiction, science fiction crap. But it did make me wonder, were people like, you got all the races in your body. Are you a superior human? Probably. Probably not. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. That has nothing to do with the review itself. But I thought it wrapped up too quickly and neatly. But I do like the drama. Yeah. It was just like, he was tied down. The guy was gonna, like, kill him for his blood. Another guy pops out of a coffin, terrifies him. The bad guy passes out in fear, and basically so does the main character. And then the guy who rescues them, like, did things off screen. And he's just like, oh, don't worry about it. He's tied up. You're fine. And it was like, yeah, but I want more. I want more detail. What happens? Give me the drama. So I like it because it's got a lot happening, very pulp. I love that. I still want a little bit more from it, though. I want a different ending, like more ending. So I do think that the haunted house here, let me mark it so you can see. Yeah, haunted house in B, I think, is a good spot for it. Honestly, I think I made the right call there. It's like it's good, but it could be gooder. Okay, and then Good Lady Duquesne over here. Okay. Oh, of course, said Bella. But it's quite different when I'm talking to you. I want to tell you all about myself once and forever. I'm glad it is to be only once, said the person with the edges of her lips. She's like, I want to tell you all about myself once and forever. I want you to know me. And the other lady's like, I'm glad you're only talking to me once. Please, shut up. Like, damn. Burn. And although she idolized her mother, and although the parting of mother and daughter must needs tear 2 loving hearts into shreds, the girl longed for enterprise and change and excitement, as the pages of old longed to be knights and to start for the Holy Land to break a lance with the infidel. I love the imagery of that. Just idolized her mom, but she wanted enterprise and change and excitement. Sweet. She's a sweet girl. And what's her name? Bella or something? I may have fully made that up. I don't know. What is her name? Oh, it is Bella. Nice. Yeah, she goes, becomes, what do they call them? A companion for a rich lady. This is, in the early 1900s, I think. And the companion, she gets sicker and sicker. The old lady stays the same, but the old lady isn't, like, working her like a slave or anything. She barely gets any work out of her at all. Like, she'll occasionally ask the Bella to write a letter or to read her a book. Bella spends most of her time like outdoors, but she is getting sicker and sicker, and it doesn't make any sense. And it turns out that like they've been stealing her blood for her youth. Oh. This isn't noteworthy in that I liked it. It was like the sexism of the day. Right here. Right here in this one quote. Lotta was brought up by an aunt deep down in the country and knows hardly anything about life. Her brother won't allow her to read a novel, French or English, that he has not read and approved. He treats me like a child, she told me, but I don't mind, for it's nice to know somebody loves me and cares about what I do and even about my thoughts. Sure, Jan. Sure. It's great that your brother's completely controlling what you say and what you do because it means he loves you. Sure. Oh, God. I didn't really highlight much because it wasn't necessarily like the prose that got me, but it was the story. I really liked this story. He had seen terrible faces in the hospital, faces on which disease had set dreadful marks, but he had never seen a face that impressed him so painfully as this withered countenance, with its indescribable horror of death outlived, a face that should have hidden under a coffin lid years and years ago. Everybody knows that this woman is like close to 100, probably over 100 years old, and he looks at her for the first time and he's like, damn, that bitch is old. Why isn't she dead? Fuck. Okay, man. Damn. It's way more common these days to have people over 100, I'm sure, but yeah, that was fucking funny. This is another one where it's kind of like in its subject, where the bad guy, the villain, the vampire is just like an old person. It makes sense, but it's also like, yeah, but aren't we kind of just picking on an old guy? Aren't we kind of just picking on old people when we write this? Like, not only were we like, she's stealing someone's blood to stay alive, but we're also like, and she's old as shit and she should be dead. Okay. All right. But overall, I did really like the story. Nice setup for a mystery. Was solved and settled so quickly, though, that it was a little disappointing. No real action. Everything is settled with words and money. Add one more page and put in some drama to the ending. There I am, a drama hound. I'm gonna move it out of B. I'm gonna put it No, it won't let me. Please, paint, do as I say. I'm gonna put over here. I'm gonna put in an A. I think it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty good story. I like the drama. I wish there was more drama. Okay, we are moving out of the old ones and back into the last couple stories that I didn't touch on, which were, oh, God. Oh, this one. Forever Amen by Elizabeth Massie. And this one I used gel pen on, so hopefully I don't lose any quotes in here. Good morning, Danielle said. Are you lost? The man raised his hand in tentative greeting. A fine, strong hand it was. A working man's hand with dark knuckle hair and calluses. Ooh, excuse me. And said, not now that I've beheld you. Good morning, are you lost? Not now that I've beheld you. I have to say, in this time period, that would have worked on me. This is another one where, well, no, it starts present day, then goes backwards. Present day for it. When this book came out in like 2004 or 5 or something. Actually, I'm not sure, but yeah. French countryside. Not even a countryside, because she lives... with, next to a hospital. She works for a hospital. Danielle had cried for Alexander. Marie and Clarice had just cried. I know why I underlined that one, because that one was me thinking, damn, this main character is a bad friend. She picked at the cloth-covered buttons on her bodice, imagining her hands were Alexander's. His hands were beautiful. She would never forget those hands. Marie continued to read, and Danielle heard nothing but the tone of her voice. Okay. Oh, I highlighted this one because it was funny, because it's supposed to be taken in, they're in France, but everything is in English for us, except this one part where she just screams. It's like, "Du à la petit," or "petit," or something. It's probably like, "Take pity on me," or something she screams in French, but like the whole book takes place in France, so why is only that part she screams in French? Seems kind of pointless. Just tell me what it is. She said, translate it for me. You translated everything else. Danielle is too obsessed with a man she knew for a week. Danielle is cursed by the author to obsess over and stalk a man she only knew for a week, for eternity. Let her rest. Let her move on. She's a vampire to be an easy narrator for a dude who is immortal in this very specific way that he's immortal. She's the vampire. He's a reincarnation. And she's alive to stalk and obsess over him, but they only were in love literally maybe a week before he was killed. And she didn't even know he was a reincarnation for like a while, like 100 years. And she found him again. And I just feel bad for her because she's not allowed to move on. Like, let her like fall in love with someone else, or like do anything but obsess over this one dude you knew for a week 100 years ago. Give her more goals and interests in life. That, or possibly, if you want it to be that she is a vampire and therefore she is obsessed, and being part of being a vampire is being obsessed with this man, then give like other vampires other obsessions so that's more clear. I think it'd be more interesting if like one of the girls who was turned with her, the one she's a shitty friend to, had her own obsession with like another part of her life that she can't move on from. And then you can see that, oh, it's just kind of a part of dying and coming back to life is being obsessed, and not everybody is normal and she's obsessed with this one dude she barely knew. You know? Like, give her more. Don't make her a whole life a guy. It's boring. And just makes it feel like, it makes it feel like an incomplete story. Like, I don't want to read a story and feel like, oh, you wrote this story because you wanted to talk about a guy who gets resurrected. I want to feel like, oh, you wrote like a love story, you know? But to me, when I read it, it feels like I see the pieces that you had when you made this story up, and they don't quite connect. Okay, now that I've said that, where would I rate it, though? Probably put it... C is too mean, right? Can I give it a B-? Why am I so grumpy at this one? It's just the disappointment at how big of a story it is, and yet she doesn't have much of one. It's about vampires, but it's not It's got vampires in it, but it's not about vampires, and not even in a fun way. It's just sad. I don't have to be this harsh. I'm sorry. If you want to fight with me, you can. Feel free. Feel free to argue. Deserves to be an A or B or D even. I'm gonna put it D-. My head hurts. Luckily, I have some painkillers left over from my period. TMI. It always helps to have painkillers nearby your computer when you're gaming and you stare at a screen for too long. Okay. Next one is Night Laughter by Ellen Kushner. And this one is pretty short. It's maybe 5 pages? 2, 3, 4, honestly. Yeah. I'm partial to the style of writing. I like when I let myself write, it's a struggle to write. But when I do write, I tend to go into this kind of style, kind of prosy, kind of poetry-y. Like words just kind of come out and they end up feeling very stylized sometimes. Flirtatious writing. Yeah. Perfect bite-sized story that leaves me wanting more, and I will definitely check out this author's other work. I was just a lot of little things that I liked. If I told you all of it, I would end up reading the whole story again. Rich nighttime laughter bubbles in me. I let a little of it show in the corners of my mouth to scare him. He's scared. He's all pressed into me now. I'm like sandwich filling between him and the tree. It's not... It's fun, it's wild, it's night-blooming orchid and splashing fountains in the fastest car you've ever been in, speeding along the coast. It's life. It's just really short and sweet and lovely, and I really like it. And I want to put it in S. Night Laughter. I like the joy in being being young forever. Like I like all stories, but I really appreciate the joy of being young forever and flirtatious and beautiful and using that to find people and get what you want and walk away without any guilt, because it's just what you are and who you are. Bootleg by Krista Faust. Oh, yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've been confused that the main character was chopping up a body in the opening lines for it to never be mentioned again. It was really her just cutting up pictures of her ex. And they intend you to get confused by that. Like, it was pretty clear that, like, it's a twist. You're supposed to think she's cutting him into pieces. And then it's actually a photograph. But, like, I've read this story multiple times, and it's only when I last read it that I caught that she was cutting up pictures of him. And I felt like an idiot, because I was always reading it like, okay, but she's like a murderer. She's literally cutting off his feet and his hands and his eyeballs. And then she goes on and has like a normal life, and it's never mentioned again. Why does she do that? No, she's cutting up photographs. I feel like an idiot. And 2, I kind of wish it was a little more obvious. Because I have to wonder if I'm the only one who didn't catch that she wasn't murdering someone. Please, Jesus Christ, make that more clear. Oh, and I appreciate the casual and open bisexuality, and I really do, yeah. She watched him burn for a long minute, coiling flames as blue as his eyes as they devoured him. And then she went to work on the other photographs. And somehow that second sentence just over my head, like 5 times. It was as if there had never been a Mona and Daniel. There was only Mona, now and forever. A little wiser and a lot stronger. Ready to get out there and kick the world's ass. No, she said. You can't have this. I own who I am. And then Mona closed her cold fingers into a fist and punched up through the apparition's pale chest. Sitting in a folding chair behind the science fiction glitter of the mixing board, Mona listened to herself. In her own ears, her voice sounded almost alien, like a living thing. There was an edge beneath the words, a rough tenderness that she had never heard before. There's a whole lot of living in that voice. Yeah, it's just, oh God, what happens? She broke up with her boyfriend. He's been cheating on her. She goes back to her hometown to spend time with her friends who've been contacting her to see if she wants to hang out. And when she's there, she learns that one of her ex-girlfriends has like a weird thing. They think that she's just made a double of Mona from when they were dating. Like, turned another person into a double of her somehow. But really, it's like weird black magic-y yearning and love and obsession made into form. So it is Mona, but it's not like another person. So that's why she punches through the apparition. And then she just kind of comes out on the other side stronger and more sure of who she is, which I really appreciate. And I do appreciate that, like, she has girlfriends, she has boyfriends, she's just casually bisexual and kinky, and it just is who she is. A lot of this book has been very straight. Straight, white, cis, all of those things. It's nice to see something else. Able-bodied, even. I mean, the disabled people have been villains. So yeah, I really liked Bootleg. I think it's a really good story. I am bitter that that first part has gone over my head so many times. Where would I put this? I don't think it'd be wrong to put it in S tier, honestly. It was a pretty good little story. Oh, oops. The page flipped to the next one, and I was like, wait, what's the title? Bootleg. A nice little story about growing up and accepting that you aren't who you are. Oh, come on. Okay. That isn't perfect, and it's gonna drive me crazy. Bootleg. Okay. There. Only a couple more. 2, like 5. Yeah. This isn't gonna take that long at all, huh? Oh, Fang Thief by Gayla Blau. Let's read the... From the trench coat, he pulled a car jack and proceeded to smash every piece of glass and every panel and dent every panel on the car. It took about 20 seconds. My note here was that God, can you hear the trains? Manser is a little too Michael Myers. It's like, dude, how did you pull a thing from your trench coat and then smash every piece of glass and dent every panel on the car in about 20 seconds? Kind of funny to picture, honestly. Like, damn, fuck. Her voice made as much impact on the house as a candy floss mallet. It died on the walls, absorbed so swiftly, as it was as if the house was sucking her in, having been starved of human company for so long. Jesus, can't she do what girls your age do in the movies? Faint or something? He wore a butcher's apron that was slathered with blood. He smoked a cigarette, the end of which was patterned with bloody prints from his fingers. A comma of blood could be mistaken for a kiss curl on his forehead. Creepy, gross, disgusting, unsettling, weird. I don't like it. Do you want the offcuts? Losh asked, wiping his eyes and jerking a thumb at a bucket tastefully covered with a dishcloth. Oh, God, that bucket tastefully covered with a dishcloth makes me want to throw up. Yeah, I thought he was a little too Michael Myers, too, like, Michael was originally, I think, conceived to be kind of more like a phantom, and that's how he just always seems to find you and get to you, I think. So it was kind of like, it makes sense in the story how he finds them. He just has connections, and he happened to have the weekend free, and he happened to be nearby. But it is kind of like, yeah, but he also smashed up a car pretty fast and stood in the way of that car, like he was in the road or something, so they were driving towards him and stopped, and then he beat them up. And it was like, do people even do that? That's a little too much even for me. And he's not even the vampire. Or, like, he manages to get the girl, and not only does he find them in the wild because of a convenient car accident, but then he takes Laura, the girl, and he gets to do the weird, creepy things that he wants to do with her. And it's just, I don't know, it's like a lot. It's kind of a lot. It's a little inhuman. And he's not the vampire. The overall timeline is confusing. They seem to go into debt when Laura is born, and yet she's a preteen when the story starts. Yeah, that was weird. They do really, they like really gloss over. They're like, we're in debt, and then we can't pay it, and now we're being, followed by this guy. But, like, they seem to have gone into debt when she was a child, and now she's, like, 12. Shouldn't she either still be a child, or shouldn't you have just had a 12-year-old daughter before you married this man and got married and then fell into debt with him? It's just weird. Like, I remember reading it and, like, picturing her as, like, a toddler in the back seat. And then there's, like, a weird sexual scene that didn't need to be there. And I was like, oh, she's not a toddler. What is happening? Just weird. I think that should have been settled better. And don't really get the sexualization of Laura. What's with the boy she was clinging to? What was the point of that? Why does she have a weird sexual scene with a boy? Just to prove that she's old enough? I genuinely don't know what it added to, except to weird me out for a couple sentences. It was like a paragraph of weird. It's like, okay, but this didn't need to be in here. The rest of the story is creepy, and she's like 12. Why are we doing this? Dark, twisted, dramatic, messed up, a fun read. I still really like it. I really like how, like, unsettled I feel by the end, and, like, how happy I am that it turns out how it turns out. I mean, that, like, the guy dies. The guys who hurt Laura die, which is cool. And I mean, it feels a little shoehorned in, the vampire stuff. But I'm okay with that because, I don't know. I just want to be okay with it, okay? I'm a person. I have my biases. And my biases say, you know what? I'm fine with there being vampires in this, kind of shoehorned in. I do have to note it, though. I think it does need a little bit more work, though. Like, again, it's like that, oh god, what was it called? Forever Amen. It feels more like I have these 3 ideas. I am now going to put them into one story. And you can see the stitching on it, you know? Like a stitching on a quilt. And it's like, yeah, but maybe he could have worked a little bit more, maybe done a little bit more, and there'd be a little less obvious stitching. I like the vampires. I wish they were a little more integrated. I think the Mancer guy is a little too... Yeah, I've said all of this. I'm talking in circles. Where would I put Outfang Thief by Gala, Blau? I don't know. I want to give it like a B+. It's not quite A, but it's pretty close. Oops, I spelled it wrong. Out. Oh god. Fang. Thief. There you go. Right there. And then next story. My Brother's Keeper by Ptacek. I was puffed up with delusions of better, and my parents kept sticking pins in me, trying to make the swelling go down so they could see me better. But he'd gone to the trouble of buying a stamp and sending it to the right address. I like that the part that sticks to the main character is that her brother took the time to call out to her. He asked her for help. He's a junkie. He's in an awful place. He's been kicked out again, but he still took the time to get that stamp and mail her a letter. And I like how important that is to her and how much that means to her and makes her make a lot of sense as a character. Like, she could have turned away at any time. She didn't even have to go, but that matters to her, and I like that. But I also don't really like the main character that much. The buildings looked abandoned at first glance. At second glance, they still looked abandoned. So much of this is just like people doing drugs and being high. Oh my god, this story's long. Oh, that's the end. Wow, I really only highlighted that little bit, huh? My bad. Because again, a lot of it is just people getting high or wandering around looking for her brother, talking to people who are already high and can't really talk to her about her brother. A weird blink is such a silly small thing to hinge an alien invasion on, especially after so many pages. Yeah, she notes, like, the little bit of foreshadowing that something is wrong that sticks with her is that people are blinking weird, like, instead of their eyes going, I don't know, they're blinking weird, and she's like, huh, interesting, and she notices it in a couple people. That's fine and good, but it's, like, the only real thing, other than the cops not bugging them as much when they're obviously doing drugs, which is a big deal. But the cops don't really bother them when they're doing drugs, and there's like 3 people in town who have done who blink weird now, and it's not much to hinge in like an alien invasion type story on. I wish there was a little bit more. It feels more like the author just wants to complain about people who do drugs. Instead of write a fun and alien invasion story that has people who do drugs in it. Especially because they're the victims. Kind of a letdown ending. Wish there was more drama or action. Kind of too long for what it is. Yeah, I can't necessarily say that it drags because it's not like a bad story if you're writing, well, what sticks with me is that, like, if this was a story that you write, a contemporary story about people struggling with taking drugs and drug use and drug abuse and finding a brother who's fallen too far down the rabbit hole and trying to save him or at least help him for one day, it's not that terrible of the story. There's a snappiness to the character, which is funny. She's funny and how sassy and grumpy and impatient she is around all these people who just want to do heroin. But it's also a vampire story and a collection of vampire stories. And when you add in the alien invasion, there just isn't that much there. So I'm just like reading it like, yeah, this is cool if it's about drug use. But it's really about vampires. I feel like this shouldn't have been included in the collection. Sorry. Or they could have just like went to Pat Cadigan and been like, hey, maybe add more vampires and then we'll publish it. So at least we kind of split of like, is it a good story? Sort of. It does kind of drag on and on, even, it's, okay. We'll put it in B. I'm done, because I'm, like, trying to be like, it's not that bad, but then when I say why it's not that bad, I just end up in, no, it's B material. I love that the only person in C is the vengeful spirit of Lake Napika. I don't want to put anyone too low, but this one was so freaking boring and hard to read. Oh no. Oh no, I think I've convinced myself to put it in C. My brother's keeper. Because I remember saying the exact same thing about the vengeful spirit of Lake Napika, that it's a vampire story, sort of. And that was disappointing. Could I retroactively change the other ones? Am I going to change any more? No. This is the ultimate ranking. It goes where it goes. I'm not changing anything else. I will not analyze this further or I'm going to go insane. Ooh. So Runs the World Away by Caitlin R. Kiernan. An interesting dream of a story. I'm a fan of this style of writing. Good story with lots of mystery and intrigue. Like she belonged here instead of the muddy bottom of the Seekonk River. Another pretty broken thing in a house filled up with things that are pretty or broken or both. Filled up with antiques, and some of them breathe and some of them don't. Some, like Miss Josephine, have forgotten how or why to breathe, except to talk. God, this was such a weird, creepy, unsettling story in such a fun way. Ah. Things that mean nothing to anyone but dead girl, her puzzle, and no one else knows the way that all these pieces fit together, or even if they all fit together. Sometimes even she can't remember, but it makes her feel better to see them anyway, to lay her white hands on these trinkets and scraps, to hold them. She's looking at her like little collection of things that she hides away in a little box. She can see her breath, her soul escaping mouthful by steaming mouthful. We forget for a reason, child, the bailiff says, his rust crimson voice woven tight between the air and every snowflake. Time is too heavy to carry so much of it strung about our necks. And the summer night outside the parlor window, the night that carries her rotten soul beneath its tongue, stares back with eyes as black and secret as the bottom of a river. Yeah, I'm a fan of this style of writing. Overwrought? Possibly. I don't care. It makes my brain go, so runs the world away. Yeah, I want to put it in S. Because all I want to do is just be like, yeah, it was so pretty and interesting and cool. And I like that it doesn't feel unfinished. Like, things are left unclear, but it doesn't feel like it's unfinished. Like, they just didn't have an answer, so they didn't write one. It feels like a world that's, like, thought out and understood and just written in a flowery, pretty way that makes my brain go, wee. I like it. I want to put it in S tier, man. I think it was good. Can't believe butternut and blood is still up there. S. Okay. So runs the world away. Yeah, that definitely, because a lot of these collections are kind of made as like a way to tempt you to go and look at what the rest of the author has written, the rest of their work. And I am definitely tempted to check out Caitlin R. Kiernan. A North Light by Gwyneth Jones. I don't think I wasn't really able to go through this one. My ADD brain, it stopped me from finishing going and having little notes for the last 3 stories. I do have, like, I don't have like any highlighted lines, but I do have, the twist is a bit muddy. I wish it was foreshadowed a little bit more. Doesn't quite feel earned, except in the way that the main character deserves to be taken down a notch. Yeah, so it's like Camilla, the main character, is just using the woman who runs the inn. She's just using her, kind of like her plaything. It's kind of like, the Luella Miller story. Camilla is not disabled or anything. She's just staying at her inn, but the woman, what's her name? Noreen kind of becomes her caretaker, and it's implied that she's supposed to be like draining her soul in some way. Not necessarily drinking like her blood, but like still killing her. But the twist at the end is that no, Noreen has been doing that to Camilla, actually. Camilla is no longer beautiful and young. She's got them wrinkles, and she's tired more. Oh no, looks like the villain became the victim, which is cool. I just wish it was foreshadowed more. It was more like there's a twist. It's not a twist that doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know, name a bad finale to a TV show. How I Met Your Mother or something. I don't think it's like a bad twist. It makes sense in these types of stories. You thought you were taking from me, but I've been taking from you all along. It's not a new thing. It just wasn't like telegraphed as well as I want it to be. So it feels more like a, oh, here's a twist, and less like a, I have been hinting at something, here is the reveal. I think it would work better as a, I have been hinting, here's the reveal. That's all. That's just my one note. I wish it was worked a little bit more. Everything else is creepy and weird, and her brother, friends, boyfriend, what's his fucking name? Doing weird stuff to the kids? Yeah. Unpleasant. Unsettling. Creepy. Don't like it. Good story in that sense. Yes. Northlight. I don't know where to put this. Is it just his type level? I don't remember. Because I didn't reread it. And now I'm hesitating. I am also hesitating because I'm a little bit tired of the, she's a woman, therefore she's vain. She's a young woman, therefore she wants to be young and beautiful forever. Oh no, a wrinkle. It's the end of the world. I have to die now. You know, it's just like paint by the numbers. Humans are vain. I'm vain. Everyone's vain. A lot of society, like, we don't want to be old. We don't like old people. We don't trust them. It makes sense that we don't want to grow old. You know, like what I'm saying, like, yeah, it makes sense. But it's also like, yeah, but, like, can we go for something a little new? A little less cliche, you know? So, meh. I think I've talked myself into B again. A lot of stories are at B. I'm sorry. It's hard to escape the B. At least in this book. We'll put it over here where that spot is. A north light. Okay. Ooh, I can fit right there. Good job. North light. Okay. Next one is the last big one, and then it's the little poem that I don't mind rereading out loud, honestly. Jack by Connie Willis. Again, I did not get to this. My ADD brain refused to let me reread it to have notes or anything, but is the most recent one that we've read on this channel, so I can say at least, even if I don't have like quotations to read, my thoughts are that it's rather long, so I'm kind of an impatient person. When I'm reading these, I expect vampires, I want vampires. I go every page like, where are the vampires? There's no vampire. Where is it? And I will complain like that. And I felt that a large amount of this story was me going, you said there'd be a vampire, you're trying to hint at it, but I do not see one. And then the twist at the end is the main character coming to terms with the fact that he may or may not have been making this all up. Like, yes, Jack, the title and also the character, could be a vampire, but he could just be a man, and the main character could have been twisting Jack into a monster because of the stress of being at war, of bombs, of a new person, just this general stress, because they're in like World War II, and they're like, there's bombs everywhere, and I think they go and they find where the bombs fell so that they can pull the people out who may or may not still be alive. That's a very stressful job. That's really hard. And this one guy is very good at finding the bodies to the point where, like, nobody else would have been able to hear them, like, calling through the dirt. Nobody else would have been able to smell whatever it is. However he finds them, nobody else is capable of it. but he's really good at finding them. Therefore, maybe he isn't human. Maybe he's a creature that smells the blood or something. But it's like a really long, like it's a long story. How many pages is it? Like 30 some? 6, 21, 5. It's like 30, 50 pages just for like the hint of maybe Jack is a vampire. And then the ending is coming to terms with he probably wasn't. I was probably just seeing a monster in a very stressful time. I like it to a degree. If this wasn't in a vampire book and I just came across it in a collection of short stories, I would think it was interesting. I never thought about the people who like dug people out of broken buildings like that before, like their jobs and things. Never really thought about them, and I like history, so that was intriguing. I was intrigued by the concept of a supernatural being helping to find the people that the other humans can't find. And I really like the personal growth at the end, the realization that maybe he wasn't a monster. Maybe I was just looking for something that wasn't there. It didn't feel earned, though. And I believe, thinking about it, that the story wants to be a character study, but it doesn't necessarily study the main character that much. Like, everybody around him has all this personality. There's a guy with a son. There's a girl who's going out and partying and flirting all the time. There's another guy who's really neurotic from all the bombs, and they need to get him off of their team, but they're also trying to protect him. And there's a boss who's being really annoying. Everybody has a personality, but the main character's only personality is just kind of doing what he's told and staring at Jack and possibly having a crush on him. So it doesn't feel earned, this like internal change at the end. Obviously it does, because he's been through a lot, but also it doesn't feel like enough. And it's disappointing because of all of the pages. The story is 50 pages long. Surely he should have had more internal stuff happening. You know, I think I tend to talk in circles when I'm left alone to speak. So apologies for all of the times I've repeated myself, but yeah, that's how I feel about the story. Not necessarily that it was shorter, not even necessarily that it's longer. I just want more of the main character in his own story. I think it would be a more satisfying ending regardless of there being vampires. And I will say it about this story as well. Maybe it shouldn't have been included. If you end your story like maybe it wasn't a vampire, I don't know. Maybe it shouldn't be included in a collection of short stories about vampires. Maybe we should look at that and go, this is 50 pages. That could be 50 pages of a different story. Let's not include it. I'm just saying. Maybe we just say no this time, you know? I'm sorry, Connie Willis. I don't have any bad vibes, bad will towards you or anything. I just, maybe it shouldn't be here. I don't know. That's how I feel. Which leaves me with a ranking. I'm gonna put it in C. I feel bad. I feel bad because it's not like terrible. Just not like, why is it in the collection? At least like I don't know. I'm out of words, talking in circles. I feel bad, but ultimate ranking, gonna leave it as a C. Yeah, okay. Oops. No. Stop that. And I closed it, but there was one poem left. I don't know how to rank a poem, but we can read it again. Vampire by Jane Yolen. Oh God, I have ripped the frickin' binding out of this poor book. We stalk the dark, live in the flood. We take the madness in the blood. A moment's prick, a minute's pain, and then we live to love again. Drink the night, rue the day. We hear the beat beneath the breast. We sip the wine that fills the chest. A moment's prick, a minute's pain. Our living is not just in vain. Drink the night, rue the day. We do not shrink from blood's dark feast. We take the man, we leave the beast. In moment's prick, a moment's pain, we live to live again. Drink the night, rue the day. My only insight about vampires is that they suck. This poem was written with a melody in my head. I was writing songs for Boiled in Lead at the time, as well as for the Flash Girls and Lou Collins, but the melody has gone away. Yeah, you can like tell this is intended to be a song. It's okay. Like as poetry goes. It's alright. I like it. I like the vibe. It's cute. I wish it was a song and not just a little poem. Maybe somebody put a backtrack to it. I would love to see that. Where do I rank it? Oh God. Oh jeez. Oh jeez. Oh jeez. Can I be a poetry? Can I be a poetry snob? Can I be a poetry snob? I'm gonna be a poetry snob. Vampire. And a song snob. Honestly, you can have some good lyrics. You can write better lyrics. I believe in you. Okay, the ultimate ranking. There you go. Prince of Flowers, Surfaces Rendered, Night Laughter, Bootleg, Venus Rising on Water, So Runs the World Away. Congratulations, you've won. Butternut and Blood, you've only won by a technicality, that you killed a slave owner. Feel good about yourself? Feel bad? I don't know. Congratulations, you've won. Homewrecker, A Question of Patronage, Hazako-san, and One Among Millions. Feel shame. Shame on you. Shame on you for existing. Everybody else could try. I believe in you. You can do it. You can do it again. We'll see what else you've written. Maybe one day. Who knows? Yeah. Cool. Final ranking. I don't have a soundboard, so I can't do like clapping or anything. So clap for me. Okay. So we still got like enough time for a story or two. May as well start the new book. Hell yeah. Start a new book tonight. Sisters of the Night, edited by Barbara Hambley and Martin H. Greenberg. You can find this on, Amazon probably. I got it at my local used bookstore. Let me see. It was published in 1995. And it has 15 new and original stories about female vampires and their prey. Introduction. My best friend in high school was the oldest of 8 girls. There were boys in the family too, but for a variety of reasons, having mostly to do with age, they barely impinged upon my consciousness. In the long years since, I have watched these ladies pursue careers as mothers, auto mechanics, real estate agents, editors, and musicians, blondes and brunettes, brown eyes, blue or hazel, round chins, square chins, heart-shaped faces, and rectangular bones and curves. They all look completely different until you put them in the same room, and then you wonder why you never noticed that they all look alike, which is, I suppose, one of the things about sisters. What exactly is a vampire? Legends varies widely. Contemporary fiction more widely still. The main points agreed upon seem to be that they are creatures who live on human blood. which prolongs their lives indefinitely, that they cannot abide the daylight, although there is a certain amount of disagreement about the effect the sun's light has on them, that they use sexuality and desire as a lure to summon and incapacitate their victims. This last is a powerful image, and to some an all-pervasive metaphor when applied to the women as vampire, loving that absorbs and destroys the lover, the moth going willingly to the flame, the immortal beloved who lives on the blood of 1,000 mortal men. When asked to edit this anthology, I wondered whether the stories sent to me by men would differ in some distinctive fashion from the stories written by women, whether there would be some kind of sheer line of perception based on gender. Instead, of course, I discovered that any story turned in by anybody was wildly different from everything else. Even stories with ostensibly similar themes ended up in strange territory indeed. Witness the 3 stories in the anthology that deal with the vampire as mother. To the timeless feminine cultural archetypes of maiden and mother, lover and crone, have been added PTA member, bimbo, alien, and things that cannot even be seen or defined. Trolls, angels, the smell of blood behind your shoulder in the dark. Yet when you look at them again, they're all about the same thing, all completely different until you put them together in the same room. The Sisters of the Night, Barbara Hambly. Should I read the little... Nah. Want me to read the back? I can read the back, too. The most deadly women in the world. Barbara Hambly, best-selling author of Those Who Hunt the Night, and Martin H. Greenberg, one of the most respected editors in the field of... Okay, I don't care. Sisters of the Night. They're everywhere and nowhere, from ancient days to here and now, stalking nocturnal forests, city lights, and suburban PTAs. They're blessed and cursed, feared and adored. One may be your office mate, a stranger on the street, your best friend's mom, your lost dream, your destiny, or you. Let me take a drink, and then we can read the first story. And I didn't write down how to pronounce some of the words that I marked down as needing to look up in the dictionary, so wish us all luck. Empty by M. John Harrison. Not everyone looks in a mirror one day and sees they've grown old, but we all get some reminder. You slip off the curb and break your ankle, or you suffer something you think is an angina, a pain in the heart on a wet Monday morning, or someone you depended on leaves you. Our marriage always stifled me. Your whole life lurches, and that's when you get your glimpse of the doorway between the 2 big rooms of existence. Suddenly your confidence has gone. You were middle-aged, now you're old. I can always tell when this has happened to someone I know. They get well, remarry, beat the clock, but their eyes take on a wounded, flabby look. They've stopped trusting other people, perhaps. Certainly, they've stopped trusting themselves. Most of all, they've stopped trusting life. Young people can shrug things off, shave their heads, queue in the rain for hours for tickets, crash a motorcycle, juggle with a gun, but the rest of us are just standing there in rows, with a nice touch of gray in the hair, watching the cars rush past and wondering if we'll ever dare cross the road again. Some people go longer than others before that pain in the heart knocks them down. I lasted a long time, and in the end, none of those ordinary things happened to me. The shock I got was in some ways easier to understand. In some ways, it was harder. My name is Jacob Wishart. I find other people for a living, kids especially. They go off course. They bolt and get lost. Perhaps that was never their real intention. Perhaps it was just language, a confused, emotional invitation. Follow me. So I follow them into the bash cities in Birmingham, Leeds, and London. Tell them my favorite band is Pearl Jam, which is not entirely a lie. Then entice them back to their middle-class parents. Cruel, I know, but by the time I get to them, they're sick of living in a cardboard box anyway. And yet sometimes you think these kids have eyes like old glass beads. If they're looking at anything, it isn't you. They hear music in their heads all the time. You forgot it long ago. Worse than that, oh God, you can't get over the feeling that they would eat you if they refocused, if they woke up long enough. No, that they have already eaten you. But this is to jump the gun. And to be honest, I never found a runaway that didn't really want to go back. Just a little closer. Hello. Most of my clients are private, although I get the occasional case from the social services. My office is in King's Cross, but I don't keep paper there. To tell the truth, I throw away anything that bores me. I once began a CV. My name is Jacob Wishart, and I don't own much. Live alone, travel light, never sign your own name. They didn't give me the post. I dressed 20, passed for 30, but the day Anne McGrath phoned me from Manchester, I was 47 years old. Annie, I said, hiya. We talked for a moment about the weather, the job. Then she said, I've got work for you if you want it. I need someone to charm a runaway. She won't open up for us. You've already got her back, I said. There was a silence. Yes, she admitted. I find the kids, I pointed out. Someone else can counsel them. Life's too short. It's not like that. So what is it like, Annie? When she didn't answer, I said, how long was she away? Another pause. 2 days. 2 days? Don't waste my time. She can't tell us what happened to her. They keep it to themselves, Annie. They want to forget it. I won't be happy until I know. Annie, you already know. You know what the luckier ones do. They take the train into Manchester. They dance. They get lost looking for crack. The real street kids steal their money the first night. They try begging, and it makes them feel sick. They spend the rest of the weekend in the bus station and the rest of their lives trying to guess if they caught AIDS from someone's dreadlocks. Jake, will you listen for once? I always listen. She put the phone down. I heard it go down, click. Annie? I rang her back. I'm sorry, I said. What happened to her? She got lost on the moors between Manchester and Sheffield, Jake. So? So it's the back end of nothing up there, just a lot of empty hills. She spent 2 nights wandering about without even a coat. When we ask her what happened, she says, a lady looked after me. Do you understand, Jake? No crack, no dreadlocks, just a lady looked after me. It's not that she won't tell, it's that she can't. She doesn't seem to know what happened to her. I thought about it. Who would be paying me for this? I said. Oh, so now you're interested. Who would be paying? The department? Try again, Annie. Remember me? I'm Jake. All right, she said tiredly. I'm paying for it. You really do want to know, don't you? I drove up 2 days later with my real office, a 50-megabyte Dell laptop, beside me on the front seat of the car. I took the M1, then swung west from Sheffield along Woodhead Road to get some feel for the scene. It was late March, the weather by turns squally and bright, very cold. The moors unfolded suddenly in front of me, long black slopes dotted with sheep, a chain of reservoirs like molten tin, the big quarries glittering with icy rock against dirty blue clouds. I thought about the girl stumbling around on her own, able to make out the city lights 1 minute, the next staring into darkness. Snow had fallen while she was missing. You could see the remains of it salted across the upper curves of the moor. Further down, it had already cleared. I shivered and turned the heater up. The roads were empty. By midday, I had checked into the Britannia Hotel. From there, I phoned Anne McGrath. You were right, I admitted. It's the last place God made. Never doubt me, she said. She gave me an address in Hyde, a burnt-out industrial suburb, which had somehow spawned middle-class suburbs of its own. Talk to the girl, she said, but don't upset the parents. Are we sure she was really up there? Yes. Don't upset the parents, Jake. In the event I didn't see them. Not then. Their house was about 5 years old. The stonework looked raw and new, but the Georgian windows frames were already peeling in the Pennine weather. Like many of the other houses on the estate, it was for sale. There was a strip of bare lawn at the front, and at the back, double-glazed patio doors from which you had a view north and east of Harrop Edge. As I knocked on the door, a bitterly cold wind was blowing down off the moor. The girl herself let me in and showed me to the dining room. There, the afternoon light lay obliquely across a reproduction refectory table, where it discovered kitchen scissors, a white vase half full of water, and 2 or 3 bunches of orange lilies recently unwrapped from florist's paper. As we talked, the girl busied herself with the flowers. The first thing she said to me after she let me in was, "These moors used to be a sea." She waved her arm toward Harrop Edge, as if she could still make out the brackish, carboniferous shallows lapping there. "Did you know that?" "Of course you'll say you did." "Adults know everything," I said. "I thought you understood that." We laughed. "The lilies are nice," I said. "They are, aren't they?" She was perhaps 16 years old, eager to talk one moment, a bit detached the next. Of her parents, she said apologetically, "They take too much care of me." She found her first night on the moor easy to explain, her subsequent disorientation more difficult. This had so shocked her mother and father she was reduced to denying it, insisting instead, "I got a bit muddy, that's all. They shouldn't have been so upset. I got a bit tired wandering about all night," she assured me several times. "I wasn't drunk. You couldn't have been drunk on what I had." I didn't think she was lying. There had been an end-of-term party at Ashton Technical College on the Friday. An anarchic, why can't I say this word? Affair, which lasted all afternoon. Suddenly, some of her friends, growing bored, had decided to drive down Long Dindale to the big quarry above Crowden. They had this idea of watching the sunset from the top, she told me, with a kind of musing pride, as if she were bringing them out to show me. "They're all mad." Entering the pass and looking back, they had glimpsed Altdorfer clouds, the sun already smearing itself the color of carnations behind the church-topped hill at Mottram. Further west, orange light flared off an office block miles away in Stockport. It was lovely, she said. It really was. She had enjoyed the drive, too. I felt safe. The big sides of the moor had closed in over her. A stoat had loped across the road on a tight curve in the twilight. We were all laughing and singing. We had the stereo on as loud as it would go. Between the trees, she had glimpsed the gray water of the Athero reservoirs racing along beside them. It was almost dark when they parked the car, she told me, but they still thought we would have time to walk up to the quarry and back. It's steep, but it's not far. There are so many little paths up there, all going in different directions. She thought about this. Somehow I got separated. They didn't notice, and they drove back without me. Nice friends, I said. It wasn't their fault. It was very steep up there in the dark. I'd really been enjoying it until then. This woman who found you the next morning, you remember her? Not really. I was so tired. I've been walking about all night. Up there it's all lumps of grass and mud. At first I could see the road, but I could never get down to it. Later, just as I was completely lost, I seemed to be with someone. She looked at me as if I could help her understand this. At first I thought it was Mom, she appealed. The way someone you know is with you in a dream. But it couldn't have been, could it? And anyway, this woman was too young. After you had got down to the village, I asked, "What happened?" "We talked," was all she would say. "What about?" "Miss McGrath asked me all this." "Annie," I said. "Annie asked me all this. I've told her all this before." She moved her hands in her lap. Something she remembered caused her to smile down at them. "It was the most beautiful morning," she said. "I was really tired, but I had a feeling of being inside it. We talked about that." She had walked round the old moorside village of Tintwistle with the woman whose face she was not yet ready to recall, and that was what they had talked about. How sometimes you're so happy everything seems to take you into itself. A Burmese cat, she remembered, had run up to them along a stone wall, purring to be let into its house. No one was awake yet. The valley was full of mist. Then, as we were looking, the sun came up, and it all poured away. The whole valley had emptied itself like a jug of milk, westward toward Manchester. She didn't know the names of any of the hills you can see from there, so I told her. Then we went into a little graveyard. After a time, I managed to ask, "Which of you suggested going into the graveyard?" She didn't remember. "It could be important," I said. "I can't remember now. She said she had once lived near the Danube. She was beautiful. She was too tall to be my mother, and too sad. Anyway, Mom was down here all the time." "For God's sake," I heard myself shout. "You were with her all that day and most of the next. Where did she take you?" The girl shrugged and winced. I knew she couldn't answer. I knew I ought to stop trying to make her. "Did she show you anything in the graveyard? What did she say? Tell me again what she said." Suddenly I remembered the weather. 2 inches of snow fell up there and then melted again. Where on earth did you go during that? I didn't see any snow, she said. It was beautiful and sunny. It was warm. She looked stubbornly away from me, blinking. I let a minute go by, then asked as lightly as I could, "And it was this woman who told you the moors are a sea?" She surprised me by laughing suddenly. "The river that came out here was bigger than the Danube," she said. "You can say you knew this, but you can't prove it." She sniffed. She pushed her hair out of her eyes and deftly wiped them with the back of her wrist. "Every pebble ever washed down that river to the sea is embedded somewhere in these moors. I understood that when I was up there, even when I was in black mud to my knees. I could feel the currents and the tide." She thought for a moment. She said, "Everything is so old." Then she said, "The moors are the sea." I tried for half an hour to get further, then gave up and left. The moors are the sea. This image of a fixed landscape is being comprised of movement. The flecks of suspended sand, the quartz pebbles sucked along by plated streams of water, was the very last thing I had come for. As I was going, she said, "Wait a minute," and ran back into the house. After a moment, she returned with some of the orange lilies wrapped in green tissue paper. "I know you like these," she said gravely, "and I've got far too many." I was so surprised I took them. "Thank you." There was still plenty of daylight, so I put the flowers carefully on the back seat of the car and went to look at the graveyard. I couldn't think where else to start. Pause to drink. Wishart. My mother often pronounced it Wishhard. Wish hard, wish heart, she would encourage me when I was little. Wish hard for what? To stay 4 years old and have her attention forever and not end up in the ground the way she did when I was 11? Effectively, there were 2 graveyards at Tintwistle. One was a little higher than the other on the steep hillside above the A628, with 13 stone steps to connect them. It was like deep winter up there that afternoon. I had no idea what I had come for, but I knew I wasn't tempted to look for it in the upper cemetery. The graves were old and unkempt, dead leaves frozen onto the narrow gravel paths between them. In more than one place, a good-sized young tree had broken the stones, or pushed them aside. The flower vases were full of ice. There was a bitter rime on everything, and a rusty iron angel on a plinth to watch over all of it. At least below the steps, the living were still making an effort. Someone was keeping the bramble suckers cut back, and I could have had my choice of mixed bouquets and cellophane and yellow ribbon. I left the car blocking the lane outside and wandered from stone to stone, blowing into my hands, reading off the epitaphs as if all that marble were a database whose organizational principle I didn't yet understand. Passed into the higher life, faithful unto death. A line of music was inscribed underneath, with the words, "Come unto me, all ye that labor." Fell asleep aged 63 years. And finally, "They died that we might live in peace." I could hear the heavy traffic grinding past down on the Woodhead Road, the empty bleat of the sheep on the moors above. Light began to go out of the air. It wasn't the approach of evening, just that sudden flattening or graying of the light you sometimes see in the late afternoon. When I looked up again, there was a woman in the upper graveyard, toiling between the stones in silence, just like me. Later, when Anne McGrath asked me, "So what was she doing?" I would answer, moving something from one grave to another. But at the time, who could be certain? 30 yards away in that elusive light, I wasn't entirely sure I could see her anyway. Bundled up in a peach-colored raincoat and a headscarf, she looked old. Yet when she turned round, I saw that she was younger than me, with a sallow, Italianate face too broad and heavy in the bones, distorted further by some birth defect which dragged the mouth down in a permanent sneer. Her eyes were dark and beautiful. They winced away from the rest of her face. They repudiated it, moment to moment. I don't believe she saw me there. At the same time, I'm convinced she was perfectly aware of me. Can you understand that? Slowly, she turned away again and went back to the graves. One hip was higher than the other, and she walked with an odd, painful roll. She must have been doing something. She was taking flowers off one grave and putting them on another. That's what I thought. But there weren't any flowers up there. Okay? Don't shout, Jake. What happened next, why I did what I did, is hard to explain. There was never any reason to mistake this woman for the one the girl had seen. She wasn't tall. She wasn't beautiful. Her gait was so distinctive the girl couldn't have failed to mention it. But when she left the graveyard, I turned up my coat collar and followed her, back down the hill, across the Etherow, and into Hadfield, where she waited for 5 or 10 minutes at the unmanned rail halt for a stopping train to Manchester Piccadilly. I got on the train behind her and put 2 or 3 rows of seats between us. It was an odd journey. The wide, shallow cuttings streamed past us. She stared at a magazine. I stared at her. Every time the train approached the station, she got up impatiently and waited for it to stop, only to change her mind as soon as the doors opened. Back in her seat, rifling energetically through the pages of the magazine, she shook her head as if somebody had said something she didn't want to hear. Up and down, but then, when her station turned up at last, she seemed to vanish without preamble, as if all that had been designed to confuse or hypnotize me. I woke up and rushed the open doors. There she was, waiting calmly on the platform for me. We looked each other full in the face. Across her upper lip was a distinct black mustache. Her enlarged pores seemed to exude some clumsy power. Pheromonal, speechless, very direct. Her raincoat had fallen open. Under it she was wearing a red velvet evening dress, gathered into pleats and pipes and volutes at the shoulders and round the big, awkward-looking breasts. I was still in the train. I waited a moment for something to happen. I didn't know what. I felt my mouth open to speak, but something made me turn my head as quickly as I could and stare away from her until I heard the doors wheeze shut between us. I stared up at the station signboard in astonishment. Hide. The train had begun to move again. Creepy, dude. Why are you following her? What the fuck? You don't get to do something creepy like follow somebody and then get surprised when something weird happens. At the other end, it was getting dark. Lights were coming on in the shops and cafes around Piccadilly. I went back to my hotel room and sat on the bed. When I next looked at my watch, it was 7:30. I felt too tired and too puzzled to go and fetch my car from Tintwistle. And anyway, it was time to make my report to Annie McGrath. Annie, a tall girl who had sweated out the Thatcher years in AIDS counseling in West London, still wore 501s and a black leather jacket to work. In those old days we had something going, but I caught her too many times staring out onto the traffic on the Fulham Palace Road at lunchtime, stooped over her own folded arms, her kind, damp, slightly protuberant eyes full of some sense of inadequacy and professional frustration I didn't want to share. How either of us ended up in that sort of work, I don't know. She was too easily hurt, and I was too impatient. When I stared out of the window, it was to try and catch sight of the hot German saloon cars heading across the overpass for a weekend in the country. I wanted one of my own. At least if we've gone into the media, I'd once said to her, we'd still be together, living in North London with the rest of our generation, stuffing down the lamb pisanda at the Anglo-Asian on Stoke Newington Church Street and saying, there's someone over there I know, but I'm not sure he'll remember me. Nick Hornby, you know, he wrote Fever Pitch. Now, a decade or more later, we found ourselves in a wine bar in an alley just off St. Anne's Square. For some reason, they had called it Ganders Go South. Ganders Go South. You went down a flight of stairs, past the bouncer, and inside was a small dance floor, really just a space cleared among the tables in front of the jazz band on its pokey dais in the corner. Anne liked Ganders Go South because they would still serve you garlic mushrooms there at 11:30 at night. Sometimes she didn't get finished until then. We sat down near the bar. Anne ordered the vegetarian lasagna, but I didn't feel like eating, so I had a couple of San Miguel beers instead. I went to hide, I said. So tell me. I gave her a version of my interview with the girl, concentrating on the end-of-term party, the drive up to the moor, the girl becoming separated from her friends. They were having so much fun they drove home without her. I already know how she got lost, Anne said. I want to know how she was found. I told her. I said, if you can make anything of that, you're welcome to it. I went to the toilet. You should have been more persistent, Anne said when I came back. Look, I warned her, I'm not a policeman. This is enough of a nightmare already. This woman, whoever she was, enticed the girl into Tint Whistle Graveyard. Then they wandered about in the sunshine all day, while the world you and I live in got 2 inches of snow. How do you want to explain that? I can't. Can the police? Oh, come on, Jake. I might talk to them, I said. She laughed. They won't talk to you, she warned me. Why? Have you seen yourself today? These are my work clothes. She looked round the bar. I wonder they let you in here at all, Jake, she said. Then she added, do you know what's wrong with men like you? You force the rest of us to live in the real world, so you don't have to. It's quite clever what you do. I kept things light, I said. That sounds like the politics of envy to me. I wash my hands of you, Jake. People were drifting in from the square with its dark bookshops and trembling rainy light. A couple had begun to dance. The girl was only a secretary, approaching 30 but still pretty in a nervous way. Approaching 30 but still pretty. Thanks. And she was only going to take the man home and screw him until he passed out, if he didn't pass out before. It couldn't lead to anything but emptiness, misunderstood intentions, and a bad head. And it had happened before in the history of the world. But I suddenly felt fiercely protective of her. I loved the delight on her face, the way her arms laced around his neck, the way she kept on dancing when the music stopped, her delicate, attractive greed. I heard myself say to Annie, do you want to come back to the hotel with me? No. The police, then. Give me a name. I know a detective sergeant at Hyde, she said. His name is Booth. You could talk to him. He always gets missing children because he was a minor player in the old Hindley and Brady investigation. Remember Hindley and Brady, Jake? All those kids tortured in a council house in Hattersley, then dumped on the moors? I remembered them. Brady played the little drummer boy while Myra Hindley forced a 10-year-old girl to do things to him. They taped it all and took black and white photos. I remember Annie. Later, unable to sleep, I booted up the Dell and plodded aimlessly through my database. Children's names and ages. Nothing but children's names and ages. I wouldn't find the girl in there. I knew. I would have trouble finding her in herself. Her adult calm, her care with me and all the others. The sense that she knew, somehow, without knowing that she knew. Something I would never know, could only leave me puzzled, unassuaged. When I woke up on Sunday morning, I found that the flowers the girl had given me had dropped pollen onto the black plastic casing of the computer. It was light and gritty, a burnt orange color. Still unwilling to believe she had spent her missing days on the moor, I wasted 3 hours touting a Polaroid. I wasted 3 hours touting a Polaroid of the girl around central Manchester, asking people if they'd seen her. Bouncers, dealers, 16-year-old indie clubbers trudging home in the cold with eyes like the bottoms of rivers, 2 old women who lived in doorways off Piccadilly. The girl smiled out of the picture at them, and they all said how pretty she was. Everyone I spoke to wanted to help, but no one could say they had seen her. She looked too much like all the others. At noon, I packed it in and caught a bus to Hyde, where I met Detective Sergeant Booth outside the Onward Street police station in the rain. Cheerio, then, he was saying to someone as he came out. He was eating from a paper bag printed with the words, Fresh Bakery Takeaway, in red block letters. Booth and I were much of an age, but thinning hair and a kind of sad disaffection with the realities of his trade made me think he was a lot older. He must have concluded the same, because he gave me a straight, kindly look and called me lad. I was obscurely comforted. He added, 3 children, including a teenage daughter of his own. Good fun, kiddies, he maintained, but they'll wear you out if you let 'em. I've been careful not to have any. He waited politely in case I wanted to develop the argument. Then he said, aye, well, sensible enough. Look, about this girl you're interested in, there's not a deal more I can add to what Annie already knows. He studied his watch. Have you got a minute? I said I had. Then I'll show you why. We got into his car, an old red Valhalla Astra, which smelled faintly of his wife's running shoes, and he drove up through all the decaying mill towns onto the moor. Stalybridge, Mausley, Greenfield. I soon felt lost. God, fucking same. Aren't we going to Tintwistle? I asked, but he didn't answer. Every house looked like every other house. They could have been killing children at every curve of the A635, where it coiled up through the Chew Valley, beneath 1,000-foot slopes chaotic with the spoil from old quarries and out onto the watershed. Booth stopped at the boundary of his jurisdiction, where decent men like him toggle endlessly and amiably between the emotional states Yorkshire and Lancashire. And the peat rolls away north and south, apparently forever, like the landscape of some unimagined nuclear disaster. Look over here, lad, he invited me. That's Wessenden Head, where we dug up what was left of Leslie Ann Downey. A month we'd been looking. We were freezing cold and piss wet through. No one's sure how many kitties Brady and Hindley buried in this area alone. There were more toward... Are these real places? Huddersfield. No one's dared dig yet over at Crowden Rifle Range. He stared at me hard. Do you see what I'm suggesting? It's a big moor, this, and you're missing Lass's home and well. Still, I said, something happened to her. She's home and well, lad. Don't you want to know the truth? I crossed her off the books in less than 48 hours, he said stubbornly. She turned up alive and well. Without warning, black rain swung in across the moor toward us from the direction of Marsden. Booth started the windshield wipers, then, as an afterthought, the engine. Up, he said. We're in for it now. Water blurred the windows. It hammered on the roof. A gust of wind rocked the Astra sideways on its suspension. The world became vague and smeary, shrinking to a few clumps of bog cotton, a bank of peat, a shallow pool pocked with raindrops and full of discarded household rubbish. Booth sat there calm and unmoved. The inside of his car seemed like an enclave of life and a lot of mud and wind. It took years to find some of the poor little effers, he remembered. When we did, they were naught but bones and clothes. I couldn't argue with that. We sat without speaking for a moment. The rain turned into sleet, then passed away quickly toward Stockport, as if it had something else to do. Booth watched it go. Then he said, I'll take you to Tintwistle to pick up your car then. He grinned. Dark blue F-registered Mercedes. 190E, was it? We had it reported as blocking a road there. Ah, I said. Bit daft to leave a nice car like that all night unattended. I suppose it was, I said. No suppose about it, lad. When he let me out 20 minutes later, it was raining again. Tintwistle looked sodden and dark. The graveyard was empty. When I started the Mercedes, the sound system came alive too. I had them fit a 120-watt Alpine RDS CD tuner with a 6-disc changer in the trunk. Music tumbled out of it into the wet air like blocks of concrete into a skip. John Mellencamp's Jack and Diane, with its mournful injunction, hold on to 16 as long as you can. As if attracted by the noise, Booth, who had been about to drive off, got out of his Astra and wandered over. He listened to the music for a moment, then leaned in through the open driver's window and made turning motions with his right hand to indicate that I should drop the volume. As soon as he thought I could hear him, he said, Try and see it this way. Truth is just something that's happened. You may find it out, you may not. It's a policeman's job to keep folks safe. Home and well, lad, or bones and clothes. I know which I prefer. He nodded briefly. Say hello to Annie for me, he said. I whispered to myself as I watched him drive off toward Hyde. I will that, lad. Mind how you go. I never saw him again. It was nearly dark, and there was only one place I hadn't been yet, so I went there. I started from Ashton. Oh, let me drink something. I started from Ashton, just the way the girl had done. Water glittered like strips of silver paper as I dropped into Longdendale. Oak trees, green with lichen, seemed to hang motionless at each blind curve. dip toward me like oriental dancers, pivot away suddenly. In the driving mirror, I could see last year's dead leaves panicking about in my wake. An hour later, I was stumbling into Crowden Great Quarry in the dark. Civil engineers had sliced the top off the hill in the 1800s, using high explosives which left the rock shattered to its heart, a permanently unstable frieze of hanging ribs and collapsing pillars 100 feet high and 300 yards long, over which gusts of wind now ruffled and boomed. The floor beneath was hummocky, furrowed, strewn with bits of rusty angle iron and fallen rocks the size of front room furniture. I entered this landscape with sore ankles and wet feet, nervous, out of breath, cold despite my felt-lined Afghan jacket. I had no idea why I had come. For 20 or 30 minutes I poked about, picking up a Coke can whitened by the weather, examining a name scratched on a stone, as if the quarry itself might be a clue. I trod in sheep shit, talked to myself for company. I said, "Laws was 'ere." I said, "Jesus, it's freaking cold in the natural world." I said, "Wish hard, wish heart." As if that had been the key, the air filled itself with brightness, like a glass filling itself with water. The dawn evolves, color to color, tone to tone, changing all the time. We expect that. We welcome it. But from the outset, this was the light of a sunny August morning, night to day, winter to summer, like theater lights coming up, and when the transition was complete, I stood knee-deep in bilberry and heather. Foxgloves grew on the ledges above me, ferns in the shadows, and bright green moss where water trickled down the rock. Bees zoomed across the open spaces in long, flat trajectories. There were sheep cropping unconcernedly at the top of the spoil heaps, sheep bleating distantly from the valley. I could smell the strange, spicy smell of the gritstone itself. I could see the hills in the distance, sleeping like animals, brassy with sunlight, huge with the shadows of clouds, patched with little fields and hanging woods. Beyond all that, I thought I could make out the Cheshire plain, the misty hook of Frodsham edge on a long gray layered horizon. Closer to, oak trees clung to the slopes. There were holly trees in the curves and braids of the old riverbed, little collapsed stone walls half hidden in the bracken. Up from Crowden, with its shining slate roofs and smoky chimneys, its bright green pocket handkerchief campsite of blue and orange tents, came the smell of food. "It was beautiful and sunny," I heard the girl whisper. "We walked about all day." Another voice added firmly, "No death." I had time to look at the clouds, white and gray, and a very blue sky, at the dark, fluted comb of Torside Clough, at the vast scoops and salients on the edge of Bleaklough, where the moors were camfered off as if someone had sandpapered them long ago. Then it all darkened to night again. I hope to God you don't know what the towns are and how to say them. Let's live in let's live in ignorance together. Oh God. "Come back," I shouted. "I'm sorry?" The quarry walls hung like the volutes of a rotten curtain. 2 or 3 pieces of wastepaper blew round my ankles. Then there seemed to be somebody standing behind me. The air was filled with a vile smell, which I thought for a moment was my own blood, so that I couldn't stop my hand flying up to my mouth to stem some silent, painless hemorrhage. And I stumbled away between the spoil heaps until I felt it was safe to look back. After a moment, I saw the woman in the red velvet evening dress, moving off toward the mouth of the quarry. At first, she seemed to be floating. Then I heard her picking her way carefully over the broken stones and her high heels, and after that the smell faded. The worst thing was that I wanted her to come back. She had put everything equally out of reach to me, the ordinary world as far away as that endless August day. "Screw you," I shouted, and then quieter, "Just screw you." I wiped my nose on the back of my hand and plunged directly down the waiting hillside in the dark. Back at the Britannia, I tried to phone Annie Graff. No answer. Never any answer. God save us from the half-abandoned breakfast room of a provincial hotel on a gray morning after dreams of some faded old sexual jealousy whose object we can barely recall. where they play petite fleur and other ballroom favorites at 9:30 in the morning, where the head waiter follows newcomers helplessly around saying, "Ah, you're going to sit down there, are you, sir?" then gives two people the same table, where you suddenly hear someone say triumphantly, "The answer isn't 0, separating the words exactly to give them full value in the empty room, where the only normal people have already had breakfast and gone. I drank half a cup of coffee and then tried to ring Booth from a payphone in the lobby. He wasn't in his office. Annie was just leaving hers. She said, "This is a bad time, Jake." "I know," I said. "It's the hotel phone." "A bad time. Look, Annie, I'm coming apart here. I need to talk. I can spare you 5 minutes." "No, you can't," I said. "You can screw off." I put the phone down. It took her 10 minutes to ring back. "This had better be worth it, Jake. Save your tantrums for someone else." I considered hanging up again. Instead, I told her about Tintwhistle Graveyard, the woman in the velvet dress, and what I thought might have happened to the girl. "Something happened to me up there, too," I tried to explain. "It wasn't the same thing. It wasn't so complete. At the time, I wanted it to be. That's the horror of it. I said I knew that this didn't help, but I didn't care. Places like that," I said, "and we met something up there." I said I was going back to London. Annie was silent for a moment, then she laughed bitterly. "I'm not paying you for this, Jake." "I know," I said. She cut the connection without saying goodbye. I went to my room and packed. On the way out, I caught a glimpse of myself in the long mirror by the door. I was wearing a plaid work shirt, gray Levi's dutifully out at the knee, old-fashioned industrial boots, unraveling fingerless gloves. My hair was going gray, and everything I valued except my German car was stuffed into a bicycle courier's shoulder bag with the Marin logo on the flap. I asked myself aloud, "Why the heck can't you grow up, Jacob?" No answer. I thought of all the hotels I've ever been in, and Annie McGrath saying, "I wash my hands of you." I washed my hands of myself. After I check out, I thought, I'll go and see the girl again. I would go and see her once more, just in case I could make head or tail of her. It was Monday market in Hyde Town Center. From stalls outside the Clarendon Mall, people were trying to sell one another the most broken or pointless things they could find. Second-hand shoes, rusty tools, wooden handles, 50p. Rain lashed the suburbs, to which an easterly wind had brought the smell of sulfur dioxide from factories in Sheffield and Rotherham. Rain dripped steadily down the fronts of the houses into the flower beds. Rain beaded the mahogany-look window frames, darkened the stone beneath the eaves. What I had expected was this, that the girl would greet me at her door, smiling gravely, a pair of scissors and some flower stalks, held in one hand, so that with the other she could brush her hair out of her eyes, and a gesture so uncomplicated I would understand everything. That we would both be survivors of an experience no one else could share. But she wasn't there. The door hung open. "Hello," I called. "Just a few more questions," I called. Then, "It's Jacob Wishart." The hall floor had been polished that morning. In the dining room, a watery light fell on brown and gold picture frames. I looked in on the kitchen, which smelled of Kenko coffee and detox creamy gel. I went up the stairs. Eyeballs. "Hello?" I found her parents in the bathroom. They were about my own age, perhaps a little younger, but having children had tired them. Somebody had thrown them into the bath, where they lay higgledy-piggledy, like cast-off shop dummies, the woman's arms across her husband's face. They were naked, marble white, and covered all over with small puncture wounds, as if a table fork had been stuck into them repeatedly. Around each group of punctures, the flesh was lightly bruised. There was no blood anywhere. Their eyes were closed, and I thought they were dead. Perhaps they were, but they were still talking to each other. We had such hopes for her. We had no hopes at all for the boy. Oh dear, no. The boy was all computer games and daft shoes. No hope for him at all. I made some sort of noise from the doorway. The woman's eyes sprang open. "Oh dear," she said. "Wake up, Stan. Gah, he said very loudly. His eyes opened too, but he couldn't seem to turn his head to look fully at me. He waved his arms for a moment and became still. He asked his wife, "Has he come to see the house? Because they never told us to expect him. Will he want showing around?" "Oh, he'll want showing around, love." "It's an Italian boiler," he said. "Very reliable. Gas, but electrically controlled." "After all, why would he come if he didn't want showing round?" She gave me an embarrassed smile. "Were we here the first time he called? Would you like a cup of tea?" All this time they had been trying to stand up and get out of the bath, scuffling with their thin red hands at its rounded edges, trying to pull up on each other's shoulders, fingers leaving in the pale flesh, slowly filling indentations, the yellow soles of their feet skating about on the non-slip surface. The woman would crouch, get both feet under her, and begin to straighten her legs, only to fall backward into the taps, legs splayed in the air to reveal through a grayish tuft the sore-looking lips of her sex. I wish I hadn't finished that sentence. Her husband pawed at the tiled surround. They made shallow panting sounds like children with colds. Their knees and elbows bumped hollowly on the sides of the bath. "Nice cup of tea," the mother repeated. "Have you cleaned this bath, Linda?" I slammed the door on them and ran. 45 minutes later, I put the Mercedes through a stone wall somewhere between Piston and Barnsley. At the time, I had no idea that was where I was. Evidence suggests I was doing 85 miles an hour in a built-up area. I walked away from it. Would you call that lucky? Wish hard, wish heart. Age calms you down, they say, but it's only ever made me anxious. I'm 50 now. A month or two after I wrote off the Mercedes, a letter arrived for me at King's Cross. It was from Annie McGrath. Whatever had happened in Hyde, the girl's parents were still in their house every day, eating frozen food from Waitrose and doing the ironing. The for sale board was still up. Perhaps that's just what happens to you when the vampire has emptied you out. Bird's eye lean cuisine and a slow property market. More of the same things you had all your life. You recover. You beat the clock. Nobody but me ever saw their wounds anyway. Their daughter had gone, this time for good, or so D.S. Booth thought. He was still patiently covering the ground. Her parents had wanted her to do law at the University of Liverpool. She had a place, but she never enrolled there. Through Annie, Booth sent a message. Would I keep an eye open for the girl? I knew I would, but not because he asked. The thought of her made me shudder. I don't think she's in the cardboard cities yet. I'd know. If I ever so much as sensed her there, I'd sell the database and sublease the office and never go back or follow that trade again. The rest of Annie's letter was personal. She seemed down. She was sick of the North, she said. She was sick of the amiable way her clients accommodated themselves to a life blurred by drink, handicapped by debt, pissed away, as she put it, among rusty gas stoves and bits of broken furniture, and I hate the freaking rain, she added. Take care of yourself, Jake, she advised me. No one else will. And then, I wonder if we could have tried a bit harder, you and me. Everyone says that when they're lonely. Next day they wake up and remember you're just something they used to want. After we broke up, Annie went through a lot of boyfriends. She chose probation officers, teachers she met on summer courses, people in the social services generally. They all had lives as ramshackle as hers. After a while, she would push her hands through her black leather belt whenever she was talking to a man, cup them over her lower belly. Keep out. I don't think she was aware of doing it. One of her favorite phrases was, a haystack of last straws. What a way to end a story. Just being a dick about your ex-girlfriend. Oh, wait. That was Empty by, oh, God. Empty by M. John Harrison from the Sisters of the Night book. Okay. We have finished our ranking. I'm so happy about that. And we started a new reading tonight. That's amazing. I'm excited about that too. 14 new stories. Yay! Okay. If you are here and you have been here and you made it to the end, holy shit, thank you so much. I am very thankful and appreciative. Thank you so much. I do this every week on Sundays, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've been late the last like 2 weeks, my bad, but I will be here next week. If you like what you see, please come back. Welcome to my book club. Once you're in this book club, you can never leave. It's a vampire book club. What did you expect? You can never leave. Thank you for joining. You're never allowed to leave. Okay. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.